You are listening to conservative maverick Flint Engleman on the American Maverick Show.
And the American Maverick Show continues on Red State Talk Radio Network and WCHV. Today we have, we welcome live to the show Mr. Marc Hyden. He's the National Advocacy Coordinator for conservatives concerned about the death penalty. It's a project of the Equal Justice USA. And Marc, I think we have you on the line.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I'm always excited to talk with a fellow Freemason. And if you don't mind me interjecting just real quickly, I'd like to wish my grandmother Hyden, Grandma Belk, and mother a joyous Mother's Day since I can't be with them today.
Well, that's entirely appropriate on this Mother's Day, and I wish the same to mine. But, Marc, I really would just want to kind of give you a platform to talk about your organization and just where you guys are coming from on the death penalty issue. So why don't you just go ahead and just kind of tee it up and tell us what your group is about.
Sure. Well, we're a national network of conservatives who are questioning the alignment of capital punishment with our conservative principles. We're trying to shatter the myth that all conservatives blindly support the death penalty. I mean, that's not true. That's a stereotype that we won't conform to and we reject. We want to continue the dialogue among conservatives and provide a forum for that. And that's a lot of what we're doing in a nutshell, in addition to engaging the grassroots and grasstops outreach and trying to bring educate more people about the death penalty and why conservatives are more and more beginning to oppose it. We actually grew out of a coalition in Montana. Several legislators who were opposed to the death penalty, well, they didn't know they were opposed to it at first, got together, realized that it was too expensive, you run the risk of executing the innocent, and many other reasons. So they came together, and as that coalition grew, the grassroots demanded that a national group be created. And we responded to that, and here we are. And we actually had our debut recently, 2013 CPAC. I believe you were there.
Yes, I was.
We were inundated by conservative supporters, and it was fantastic. I had pretty lofty goals before we went, and we exceeded all of them. And the most common question we got when we were there was, where have you guys been for so long? I thought I was the only conservative who believes the death penalty should be repealed. And that was very refreshing to hear because we heard it over and over again.
Right. Now, you've had several high-profile conservatives speak up for your organization. I'm a big fan of Jay Sekulow, and he supports the work you guys are doing. Go ahead, Marc. I'm sorry.
Sure. No, Jay Sekulow has been great. He's one of our founding members. Him, Brent Moselle, and Richard Viguerie have been with us since the beginning. They're the ones that have kind of counseled us, and they're the reason we're here in part. It's a team effort with a lot of moving pieces, but they have been instrumental in making all this happen. But after CPAC, we've gone to the Young Americans for Liberty Conference, and I'm in Austin, Texas right now. We just finished the Republican Liberty Caucus National Convention. And I have to say, the funny thing here is, when I was going up to people, talking to them about the death penalty, there was no shock. They were all saying, yeah, of course we're against it. It's a terrible program. If you're a conservative, you should be opposed to it. So, there was no trying to coax people into changing their minds. They were already there. Okay. And that's what we're finding with a lot of conservatives.
Now, folks, this is Marc Hyden. He's the National Advocacy Coordinator for conservatives concerned about the death penalty, and there's a lot of information. Obviously, we're going to continue with Marc here, but go to conservativesconcerned.org. There's a lot of info there. Kind of go into it, Marc, a little bit, specifically why, kind of the bullet points of why conservatives really need to kind of do a check down on the death penalty.
Sure, and there's many different types of conservatives out there, but across the board, whether you are conservative Republican, conservative libertarian, and there are some conservative Democrats out there as well, many of them are just finding that this just doesn't fit well with their principles. This is a wasteful and expensive program. Studies have shown that it's up to 20 times more expensive than life without the possibility of parole. State of California alone has spent over $4 billion since the 70s just to maintain this program. But it goes down to the local level, too. Jasper County, Texas, for instance, they were forced to raise property taxes by 7% to pay for one trial. And if you're a fiscal conservative, you have to reject that. And beyond that, and definitely the most important thing to me is there's an unacceptable risk of executing innocent people. For every 10 people that are executed, at least one is exonerated or released because they're wrongfully convicted. Many others are executed even with there's serious doubt regarding the verdict. Regardless of good intentions, the judicial system is not right 100% of the time. And we are in the DNA age. People like to bring that up. But DNA is only available in 5 to 10% of criminal cases. Now, beyond that, it's a failed policy for victims' families. And I say that because the appeals process is decades long, and that just re-traumatizes family members over and over and over again until they reach whatever end. It fails to make the public safer. One of the most recent studies that came out said that there's no evidence supporting that the death penalty deters anybody from murder. And that's one of the things that the death penalty is supposed to be doing, is deterring people, and it's failing at that. Especially at CPAC, I had many people come up to me and tell me that they think this program gives the government way too much power. And they're really weary of a government that has the power to put its citizens to death, and that is what this program does.
One thing I wanted to ask about, Mark, I kind of want to get back to it. You mentioned the technology or the DNA testing. It's just a general question because I'm trying to learn more about this myself. Isn't the technology to the point, and hasn't the testing been in place for a fair period of time now, that some tests were done, over the years and some people were exonerated? Haven't we reached a point where technology has been in place for a period of time where we're not finding quite as many people that are, have been wrongly convicted?
It's still happening. Just a few days ago, someone was released after being in jail for 38 years. So, no, we are not to that point. There's not enough DNA evidence. And even if there's DNA evidence, it doesn't mean it's the killers. And we found that out in other cases as well. And even if you can find DNA evidence that exonerates you, it's incredibly difficult to get that reintroduced because an appeals process is to see if you had a fair trial, not to reintroduce new evidence. So that's very difficult to get in there. Okay.
Another point I wanted to ask you about was from a victim's family standpoint. It goes back to an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. If someone had murdered someone, it was a vicious, horrible crime, and there was a conviction, and where is the resolution for this family that it seems harsh, but a lot of families want that capital punishment edge. Where do you guys stand on that point of view?
Absolutely, and my heart would go out to someone like that, and I can't tell them anything that's going to make them feel better, but this will not bring closure because there is no closure when you lose a loved one. That just doesn't exist. But every victim's family member that we've talked to so far, and I actually worked with one yesterday at the Republican Liberty Caucus convention, every single one has said this is a very damaging process that just re-traumatizes them over and over again. And many times in the end, they don't get the death penalty that they were promised. And it tells them that certain family members or certain people that were murdered are more important than their family members. So it's a slap in the face to them. And to you mentioned eye for an eye. I would like to say that eye for an eye is actually meant to limit punishment. It's not to require a certain punishment. It's meant to say if you murder someone, they can't come back and kill your whole tribe as revenge. And that's what eye for an eye, at least my understanding of it.
Okay. And another point that I wanted to ask you to talk about was kind of if you can clarify a little bit with some data maybe about the current system. If someone is convicted in a trial for the death penalty, how long typically do they have to wait until capital punishment is carried out? And then secondary to that, what about the expense, the expense versus life in prison?
Sure. And now each state is different. So certain states, the appeals process is longer, and others it's shorter. I believe Texas is one of the shortest ones, and that's still a couple decades. I think the shortest is maybe 12 years. So
really?
It's still a very long appeals process, but I've heard of many that reached into the 40-year mark.
Wow.
Before either being released or eventually being executed. Now, as it goes for cost, it's a different subject because each state allocates money differently. Sometimes it's the counties that have to foot the bill for the trial, like in the case of Jasper County, Texas. Others, it's the state that has to pay for it. And you also have to remember there's a federal cost, too, that goes to the appeals courts. So it's an exorbitant cost. The long appeals process absorbs a lot of that. But also there's two initial trials. The trials find out if they're guilty or not guilty. Then there's another trial to see if they can have the death penalty. And I would like to say that during voir dire, if you say you're opposed to the death penalty, you're not allowed to serve on that jury, which that may not be quite a jury of your peers. So there's a lot of cost in having both of those. They're much more lengthy than life without parole trials. And there's a lot more specialists that have to come in. So it's very costly, and then they're housed for, up to 40-something years afterwards. So even if they were just put in jail, life without parole, without the possibility of parole, and they're staying there and they will serve their punishment, that would still be a fraction of the cost spent to try to put someone to death.
What is why is it so much more expensive for capital punishment? Is it just because of like you're saying, the bureaucracy involved with it? Is that primarily it, and the appeals and everything else?
Sure. I mean, it's mainly the appeals, the specialists that have to come in for the different trials, the man hours that are put in. There's a lot of moving parts that goes into this, and all of these trials and appeals processes are much longer and more in-depth than any others. Just to give you an idea, one of our affiliates in Tennessee wanted to do an open records request and get the transcript from just one murder trial. And you have to pay a tiny amount per page. And to get the transcript, it was $17,000. So this was a huge transcript. These trials take an incredibly long time, and you'd be surprised at how that money just piles up. And also there's money that having to house them as well. That is obviously similar to being in jail with life without parole, but there's the additional cost as well.
Okay, Mark. Now, I guess, how are you going to work this? Are you working this on a state level, or are you going state and federal to try to get resolution to this?
Well, as a conservative, the less we can do, personally, the less we can do with the federal government, the better. But we want to see, I would prefer to see it overturned on a state-by-state legislative basis. Federal, I'm not even talking to people about anything federal.
And you're pushing for sentencing for life without any chance of parole, correct?
That would be my preference. I'm not actually out there lobbying right now. I'm mainly engaging grass tops and the grassroots and educating right now.
Sure. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'd like to touch base with you to see how it's going. You're out there working the different causes with CPAC and other ones to really touch base with the conservatives, and we wish you the best. And plus, folks, go to conservativesconcern.org. He has a lot of information there to really explain everything they're positioning for. Mark, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.